Continue our study. As you know, I have mentioned Dell is traveling to Australia for about 2-3 weeks, and so I'm filling in. And as he's covering this quarter, we're kind of putting a pin on it and highlighting a few overarching ideas. And the emphasis I'm putting is on how do we conceive, conceptualize, make sense of the world we're in. And we're looking at the significance of that because as Dell is emphasizing the idea of the kings, we are just like the kings, created to rule, right? We talked about this in Genesis, and if humans in general are created to reign, to rule, and specifically in the storyline of the Bible, the kings were called to do that as well. We made the point last time that sadly, once you get 3 kings into it, Saul, David, Solomon, the kingdom splits, and of 40 overall kings, 20 up north, 20 down south, the Bible says that 8 of them, 8, did right in the eyes of the Lord. 8 out of 40. Which is sadly a commentary on humanity, right? We broadly overall do not rule well. And although not any one of us that I'm aware of has a kingdom, right? We get to try to rule our own lives, and how's that even going? So what would it have taken the kings to rule well, and what does it take us to rule well? And part of that is understanding the way the world functions and using the wisdom of God to rule. The wisdom of God, the presence of God, God with us to rule. And we emphasized last Wednesday a summary of what Proverbs adds to that. Today we're going to talk about Ecclesiastes, and then next Wednesday, which is my last time with you before Dell returns, we're going to look at the prayer that Solomon had that kind of gives him this title of, one of the wisest men in the Bible, yet why was that not enough? And so we're going to look at that and kind of wrap that up, and then Dell will finish up the series. So Proverbs, if you remember, Proverbs is conceptualizing basically the world in 2 paths, 2 ways of being, and one is guided by the wisdom of God, which starts with the fear of the Lord. So the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and we talked about how fear is really a combination of reverence for who God is, thus obedience. And if you have that mindset, it puts you on the path. It opens your mind and heart to allow God to guide you through His wisdom. And then we also talked about how the alternative is really folly. And nobody ever wakes up in the morning and says, I'm going to be a fool today. And so that's not what makes one a fool. What makes one a fool is trying to rule, try to reign, try to tackle life by our own wits, by our own wisdom, by our own definitions, by our own constructs. That's folly. Okay? Right. I hope you had a peppy week. Hope things are going well, because Ecclesiastes is where peppiness goes to die. And so we're going to get into Ecclesiastes. Afterwards, if you're feeling, just emotionally shooken, maybe a hug will help. Barry's always very huggable, so feel free to, give Barry a good hug. So Ecclesiastes. Just like in Proverbs, where the author, especially the first 9 chapters, speaks as if a father speaking to his children, so 10 different times it says, my son, and then kind of goes into different things about the importance of wisdom. And we made the point that that is really like a literary device, and the overarching point of that approach is Solomon speaking to his lineage, right? The kings to come. Sadly, most of them, like I said, didn't listen. Here, the author does something similar, but just different yet similar intent, where it starts out, chapter 1, verse 1. The words of, your translation probably says teacher, son of David, king in Jerusalem. So here the author is either Solomon or it's about the life of Solomon. That's a fun rabbit hole. But either way it starts is the word translated teacher, the Hebrew word there's koheleth, which literally means the one speaking. The one speaking to the gathered. Okay, so the idea is an assembly where one is going to speak. And then it indirectly says, the son of David, indirectly making the point, think of Solomon. So just like in Proverbs where Solomon is speaking to his lineage, here Solomon, or, wants you to think of the idea of Solomon, speaking to the gathered, the assembled, the congregation, right? The kingdom. And the hope here is maybe his lineage didn't listen, but will the kingdom listen? Will the people listen? So that's the imagery. And then verse 3, let's skip verse 2 for a second. Verse 3, he's going to summarize to you the essence of what he wants to speak about. So in verse 3 is a question. What do people, specifically thinking of those assembled, the people of God, what do people gain from all their labors at which they toil under the sun? Let's rephrase that. Where and how do we gain meaning and purpose in this world? What do we spend our day-to-day on that would actually be significant, that would be lasting, that would be impactful? The alternative being, of course, things that would not, that would be pointless, that would be fleeting, that would be a waste of time. And statistically, ancient Israel did too much of that, especially under the guise of the kings, right? Of a lot of those horrible kings. They spent time living lives of a kingdom that, instead of reflecting the presence and wisdom of God, reflected the wastefulness, the pointlessness of the way other kingdoms were living. And so he says, gather here, folks, right? So here we go. How should we really be living as a people of God? Man, it's almost like church. Listen up, church. How should we be living as the people of God? Now, in between the whole hey, I got something important to say, gather around church, and then the question, how should we be living? He also goes ahead and just gives out the answer. Or actually, he makes a statement about, sadly, how the people of God have been living. So let's just read it all together. Chapter 1. The words of the teacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. Meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher, utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. What do people gain from all their labors at which they toil under the sun? Right? And there's why your peppiness is leaving you. So, have we, church, been living meaningless, vanity, purposeless? Oh, no, of course not. Of Of course not. Said ancient Israel. Once again, don't know if anybody wakes up in the morning and as the North MacArthur Church of Christ, we will be meaningless. I don't think that's how our staff meetings begin. At least not the ones I'm a part of. So, could we be? 3 overarching themes I want to look at today that are kind of broad picture of what he's going to address. Now, he's going to just go down the list, trying to make the case of why he believes we people too often have been living this life. And he makes it crystal clear, right? He repeats it several times in case you're like, well, what could he really be saying? Now, 3 overarching themes that we're going to focus on. The first, the reason he says we've been wasting our time is just because of that, time. For example, and we're only going to highlight a couple examples to each one of this because of time. So, time. What's the problem with that? Chapter 1, verse 4. He says, generations come and generations go, but the earth remains forever. Like, okay, that's, factually true. But then verse 9 to 11. What has been will be again. What has been done will be done again. There's nothing new under the sun. Is there anything of which one can say, look, this is something new? It was there already, long ago. It has been before our time. Verse 11. No one remembers the former generation, and even those yet to come will not be remembered by those who follow them. Here's why humanity is quite sucky. Because there's this thing in time that is repetitive. We're stuck on a cycle. And things come and things go. We fluff it up. We dress it up. We discover new things. But the cycle repeats. You don't think so? Just take a quick, brisk walk through history. The human nature or the human mess, right? And part of the problem is the repetitiveness of the cycle, but really the reason or a reason he mentions here why the cycle repeats is because nobody's learning. Generations come, generations go, and nobody remembers a thing. You ever have your parents or your kids roll their eyes at you? You remember rolling your eyes at your parents, who rolled their eyes at their parents, all the way back to, Adam and Eve's kids who rolled their eyes at them. And Adam and Eve, I think, rolled their eyes at God. And we learn nothing. Nothing. Because every new generation thinks they're smarter, brighter, more sophisticated. Surely we're not going to repeat the mistakes of the past, so don't even bother explaining it. Once again, you remember having those conversations with your kids? Do you ever remember your child coming to you and being like, oh, Father, engage me with your wisdom. Tell me of your ways. What lessons hast thou learneth? Anybody? Because if you remember that, you need to wake up because you're having a nap. Instead, they roll their eyes and they're, and then we did that too. And then here's the sad thing. Can you even remember much of your past? Your grandparents, your great-grandparents? Maybe don't even remember their great-grandparents' name. Here's the really sad thing. It won't take too long. Nobody's going to remember you. Aren't you glad you came today? Right? Nobody's going to remember. And ultimately, people don't care. Because they're smarter and brighter. And thus we're stuck in a cycle. We're really not. The point here isn't that there's nothing new, as in Adam and Eve. Maybe Cain and Abel were fighting over the latest iPhone model. That's not his point. The point is humans, we just repeat. Violence, anger, viciousness, racism. Just repeat. So time's a problem. And the cycle that we're stuck in is a problem. And the fact that generations come and generation goes and nobody really remembers or cares is a problem. The second point that he highlights, as if that isn't depressing enough, is death. Generations come, generation goes, and then you die, and nobody remembers. Chapter 3, verse 19 and 20, he says it this way. Surely the fate of human beings is like that of animals. The same fate awaits them both. As one dies, so dies the other, because all have the same breath. Or spirit. Also valid translation. Humans have really no advantage over animals because everything is meaningless. All go to the same place, all come from dust, and from dust they return. And he's quoting what now? Genesis. Yeah, imagine that. Even the author here of Ecclesiastes liked Genesis. Tim got that. So yeah, right? So death, we're all going to die. Me, you, your pet Fluffy, all going to die. Well, ain't that peppy? So, and then it won't take long. Nobody's going to even remember you. And then go to chapter 9, go to chapter 9 now. That was chapter 3. Chapter 9, verse 2 and 3. All share the same destiny. The righteous, the wicked, the good, the bad, the clean, the unclean, those who offer sacrifice and those who do not. As it is with the good, so it is with the sinful. As it is with those who take oaths, so it is with those who do not. This is the evil in everything that happens under the sun. The same destiny overtakes them all. Well, how do you think he's feeling about that? Because you can be one of the greatest, most notable, wisest person on earth, yet you will die. You can be the king, or you can be the lowliest, most foolish nobody in the kingdom, and guess what? Also die. And then in between, so will, the donkey. Just death comes to us all. You can be good, bad, pretty, ugly. Death is just going to happen. None of those things keep you from it. Now you're like, of course, in Jesus we float to heaven, and Okay, that's not his point. His point is in this world where we're trying to navigate the mess, while we're trying to make decisions, and he thinks most of us, if not all, to some degree or another, are absolutely living meaningless lives, or we're acting in meaningless ways. Time is an issue, and so is the fact that death is coming. Death is coming. And we're wasting it. We're wasting this existence. It's running after things that are pointless. Because I want you to think about it. What's a successful life today? I interact a lot with college students, and they're all like, first of all, they're in college. Why are they in college? Then they're trying to decide what to major in. Why are they trying to decide what to major in? Then they probably want to get married. Why? Like, there's a path they're following. Why? Because, broadly speaking, society has said, go this direction. Right? How do we know we're successful, happy, living the dream? Somebody somewhere has decided some of that. Are we wasting our time? Because you know death is coming. Today, tomorrow, 100 years from now, I don't know. And he considers it an evil. That no matter how you live your life, although he's already said most of us are wasting it, but no matter how you live your life, that's still coming. It's still the end. Your final reward, or at least in this existence. And in part we know why, right? Because, Genesis in chapter 3, and and that's the world we've chosen. So time's an issue, death's an issue. I wasn't even crystal clear what to call this. So let's just go read it, and then we'll make some conclusions on this. Chapter 9, verse 11. Maybe we'll just use what he calls it. I have seen something else under the sun. The race is not to the swift, or the battle to the strong, nor food to the wise, or wealth to the brilliant, or favor to the learned, because time and chance befalls them all. There's a randomness, an inconsistency, an unpredictability that bothers him. Now, we live in a way assuming certain things are going to bring certain results, right? That's even part of the discussion today out there in the world of we're talking about equality and equity and some other things. I was listening to this podcast, and one of the speakers was making the point that the only way we're going to fix the unequalness of the world is to guarantee not equal opportunity, but equal outcomes, which is a fascinating rabbit hole to discuss. How? It presupposes the assumption we're in charge to start out with. I'd be happy enough with reasonably equal opportunities. But that's part of the problem. We are not in control. You can be as healthy, exercise, drink nothing but green-looking smoothies with godless things called kale and some other stuff, and you can die early with cancer. Now, statistically, you probably are bettering your odds, but that's about it. Or you can eat horrible things, smoke most of your life, and live to be 103. Now, you're probably beating the odds, but it's also possible. So, what guarantees do we have? Well, we don't. He says here, sadly, the race isn't always to the fastest. Because there's this weird thing called time and chance. The best team doesn't always win. We saw that Saturday, right? Time and chance. I'll probably lose some friends over that. Time and chance just overtakes us all. There's a glitch. There's this weird thingy where people fumble balls and, just get confused. There's something that happens that is statistically unlikely, yet it happens. How? Why? He just calls it time and chance. Chapter 7, verse 14. Now he applies it to a particular topic here. Verse 15. In this meaningless life of mine, I have seen both of these. Here's the rub. The righteous perishing in their righteousness, and the wicked living long in their wickedness. That sounds like Job. Job says that. Here's what I observed. Because his friends are arguing this point that good people are blessed, wicked people are punished. If Job is being punished, Job must be, there you go, follow the logic. And Job says, that would be correct, except that's not always true. I have seen those that grow old, that don't care about God, see their children before them, that they say to themselves, God, who is this Almighty that we should care? And they die a peaceful death, and the rod of God is not upon them, is what he then goes into, even the idea of justice. How's this happening? Well, same thing, verse 14, chapter 8. There's something else meaningless that occurs on earth. The righteous who get what the wicked deserve, and the wicked who get what the righteous deserve. This too, I say, is meaningless. Why is this happening? What's going on? Well, in this discussion, chapter 8, he at least gives one reason, verse 11. When the sentence for a crime is not quickly carried out, people's hearts are filled with schemes of evil. Here's part of why folks do stupid things. Because stupid ain't immediately punished. That's why. People think they're getting away with it. People think it's not bad. Oh, like I did this, and well, look, somehow my life is better. I got more money, like, look, I'm happy. I ran off the neighbor's wife. Look how wonderful life we're now having. Like, because there's no immediate punishment, people scheme. Then he goes down a little further in verse 14 and says, some people are doing good things, but yet are being punished as if they're wicked. Some people are doing horrible things, yet somehow seem to be blessed as if they're doing right. So whatever you want to call it, he just calls it time and chance, which kind of seems a little more like gambling, right? We just roll in the dice, and sometimes it goes well, sometimes it not. I don't know. So this bothers him. Time's a problem. Death comes to everybody, which is unfair and a problem. And sadly, we're wasting our time. And 3, while we're still living, there's this weird thing that happens that just doesn't make sense sometimes. So, which one is it? This or Proverbs? Because Proverbs like 2 paths. The blessed path of God's wisdom and the cursed path of, one's foolish and folliness. So be wise. Like, oh, yeah, man, I want to be wise. So I don't know, which one is it? The word translated meaningless. That's part of the struggle here. The word there is the word hevel. And really what it means, I almost thought about this, but Becky said probably best not to. I was going to bring a matchbox. Kelly just looked up concerned. I didn't bring one, right? So the word hevel here is really the idea of smoke, or dust in the wind, or just, it's there, a mist. And if you go home and light a match and then you blow it, it'll just do this little smoke. And it's just kind of, it's there, right? You see it, and it's kind of intense right after you blow the flame. And it's there, but it just kind of starts to do this dance, and it starts to like spread, and it starts to dissipate, and you like, it's there, but you can't really control it, grab it, and then it's gone. That's right. Or hevel. Meaningless implies, I think, probably more than he's trying to say here, that everything in this life has absolutely no purpose, no benefit, no impact. I don't think that's what he's saying. He's saying that everything in this life is a mist. It's smoke. It's just dust floating in the wind. And it's there, right? There's something there, but it just starts to kind of take this shape and dissipate, and you're running after it because everybody else says that's where you're going to be happy, or that's how you're going to be powerful, and you're just grasping at it and running and wasting the limited time. And part of why you're running after all these things is because your grandpa learned this lesson, but you wouldn't listen. How many generations do you have to? I mean, you can throw a dart on anything in the Old Testament in terms of ancient Israel, and there's plenty of examples of how Israel things did not go well. The north was almost like decimated by the Assyrians for infidelity, paganism, and some other bad choices. So the south, they could literally see the smoke. They learned a lesson. That generation pepped up real quick and be like, ooh, no way, Lord, save us, which he did. 130 years and change after, we're back to the same thing now. The Babylonians are just going to burn it, just zero it all out. Wouldn't you think that's enough? Isn't that enough to learn? Shouldn't that be enough for you and I to learn? But that just seems so long ago, and so, those folks were a little backwoods, and they didn't have iPhones, and so they couldn't even, did they even slice bread? Like, so how smart could they really be? So we kind of chalk it up to, that, but we're sophisticated today. We're smart. We're better. We're in tune. We can literally go answer any question we want. Now AI is going to even, it's going to be the end of us. But, until then, it'll be a fun ride. So, time, death, and this pesky thing called, just chance is just still a thing. Still a thing. Here's, I've just really, a few weekends ago, I went to the memorial service for Howard and Jane Norton. They're in Searcy. Just a lovely time. Got to see some folks I hadn't seen in years, and Ted Norton was kind enough to invite me and a couple other people there to have lunch with the family, and it's just lovely to hear the stories and to even remember their impact in my life. And the service, part of it was in English, Portuguese, Spanish, because late into his life, Howard and Jane said, you know what, let's go to Baxter Institute, and I'll be the president there. And learn Spanish and some other things. And they concluded the service, which was really cool, with a vignette, like an audio of one of his sermons that he had done a few months before, which was really cool. So there at that funeral, I'm sitting there listening to these stories and thinking about things and hearing Howard's voice. And Um, this came to mind. Ecclesiastes chapter 7. A good name is better than perfume, and the day of death better than the day of birth. It's better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting, for death is the destiny of us all, and the living should really take this to heart. I don't know. I think I'd rather be at a birthday party. You know, I like cake. They normally don't do cake at funerals, which that could be something to maybe start. But so cake and balloons and, you know, you're like, oh, birthday. And especially a little 1-year-old child, you're like, oh, coochie, coochie. And you're just like, oh, look at, ain't they precious? And you just have high hopes. And, you know, life's going to be great and they're going to do wonderful things. Well, funerals they're not happy. They're really not joyful. They're quite hard. Yet somehow the author here says that's where you need to be. Because there's something happening there that we should really take to heart. And what's happening there, you just cannot help yourself but sit there and contemplate life, the brevity of it, how decisions matter, how choices ripple, and how people will get up there and share stories of like so-and-so said this or did this and it changed their lives, and you're like, man. And then this overwhelming just feeling came over me of, on most days, I get to stand in classrooms where Howard stood, and I get to teach lessons that Howard taught, and I just felt burdened. Like, I don't measure up. How are they letting me teach? To stand there. And then I thought, what a privilege. And what will be said at my funeral? And I think that's what he's saying. That's where you do that contemplation. Before death. That's where you think of your own life. At birthday parties, everybody knows peppy, happy, cake, and coochie coochie, and you're just like, but you're not really learning anything. You're not really stopping to think about, I wonder what this baby who's now 1 year old is really going to do with their lives. Are they going to join the rank and file of humanity who's wasted their time? Are they going to be like the kings who will have wonderful, powerful opportunities only to then be agents of wickedness? You know, probably don't recommend you saying that to the parents. Oh, such a cute kid. I hope he doesn't come out to be psycho. I mean, you know, like things one should not say. So we laugh and eat cake and really distract ourselves from the fact that most of us are probably really wasting our time running after hevel, smoke. And then it dissipates, you die, and then the next generation repeats. So what should we be doing besides going home, taking the fetal position, sucking our thumbs and crying? Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verse 18. Let me recommend a couple ideas here before our time's up. This is what I have observed to be good, that is appropriate for a person is to eat and to drink and to find satisfaction in their heavy, toilsome labor under the sun during the few days of life God has given them. For this is their lot. Sounds pessimistic, but here's what he's saying. You know that song, Jesus Take the Wheel? Right? Y'all country guys, you know? Okay, I would sing it, but It will bring tears to your eyes. I think that's part of what this is about. Here's really the philosophical question. Perhaps there's not even a wheel. You're just holding on to smoke. Under the illusion you're guiding something somewhere. Instead, how about you just chill, have a cup of coffee, and just enjoy the day you have. Today, tomorrow, 100 years from now. Because that moment is a gift. Just that very moment. This moment right here. Chapter 11, verse 9 and 10. Here's to the young amongst us. To the couple of you that are here. Okay, chapter 11, verse 9. You who are young, be happy while you are young, and let your heart give you joy in the days of your youth. Follow the ways of your heart, and whatever your eyes see. And you're like, ooh, that just sounds like, man, hashtag, you only live once, let's just go. And yes, you only do have this one time. So relax, chill, and enjoy. Too many young people are like, when I grow up, and when I get out there, and when I finish college, when I get married, when I get a 401k, when I have kids, it's always somewhere else out there. Deep breath, and just enjoy the moment without having all those responsibilities. Go be silly. Because if you get to old age, you're going to look back hoping you had a little more time. But here's the kicker, though. This isn't like go a free-for-all, but know this, that for all these things, God will bring you into judgment. Now, the idea there isn't like, who's going to heaven or hell. The idea there is, listen, the life you were given, the breath, the spirit, the presence of God, the fact that his life force animated you, what are you doing with that life? Are you wasting it? Are you running after the wind? And then chapter 12, verse 13 and 14. So now that all's been heard, and we just gave you a summary, here's the conclusion. Fear God and keep his commandments, because that is the duty of humanity. For God will bring every deed into judgment, including every hidden thing, good or bad. He concludes with the same way Ecclesiastes introduces. Proverbs introduces. Fear God. Have an awe and reverence for God Almighty, and then follow his wisdom. Well, but sometimes life's inconsistent. Yes, indeed. Inevitably, we're all going to die, and that seems unfair. Yes. Nobody seems to be learning anything. Fear God and keep his commandments, because that's really each of our purpose, our duty, our responsibility, our privilege. Oh, if the kings had listened. Oh, if ancient Israel had listened. Oh, if the church would listen today. Pray with me. Dear God, we're moved by your words. We're intrigued, troubled, hopeful. Guide us in your path as the world swirls out of control, as chaos rages, as darkness marches against us, that we will leave the cosmic ruling to you, and that we will fear and follow your commandments. Help us be different from humanity of old, that we may listen, and that we may take this to heart, that will open our hearts and our minds and be guided by your presence in Jesus. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.